Hey guys, I'm Charlie from Cake, and today I'll be talking a little bit about how important it is to make sure that you're prepared for a capital raise. So capital raising can be really daunting, especially if it's your first one as a startup. But there's a few things you can start doing now to make sure that when you do get to the point where you're ready to raise, you're fully prepared. It's a few small steps to take now to avoid a huge headache later. The last thing you want is the investors running away at the last minute because they think that you're not prepared enough, or they see your cap table and they just don't find you trustworthy. So let's jump in. Most of this can be streamlined on Cake, and our partners can always assist if you need any assistance. Let's go for it. Alrighty, so one of the first things that you may want to look to do is to clean up your cap table. Now this can be a really simple step on Cake. This may involve doing a share split. For example, if you're a young company and when you incorporated the company, you only put a few shares on issue, you can easily split that into a greater number of shares on Cake so you have more shares to play with for your capital raise. That way you can allocate really specific amounts of ownership, and you can also really easily set up your ESOP. The next one is just checking your shareholder details are correct. In Cake, you can go into each shareholder and make sure it's all completely up to date. Any old transactions which you haven't entered in your cap table, you should be looking at now. You want to make sure it's completely up to date, and if there were any transfers or if there were any new issues, you want to make sure they're recorded in there and that transaction is at the date that it occurred. This is as simple as a couple of clicks in your Cake cap table. And lastly, check your cap table against your regulator's records. If that's not up to date, now is the time to do it, not when the investor's ready to go. So the next thing is really the big picture questions. This is the kind of questions that you need to think about when you're leading into the raise rather than heading in head first and forgetting about the why. So really, how much do you want to raise? How much do you need? And then how much are you prepared to give away for that capital injection? Are you looking to give away 5%, 10%, or is this a point where you're looking to give away 20% of the company? It could be really useful to get proper advice when you're thinking about these sorts of questions, so our legal partners can always jump in and assist. The next one is your valuation. Is it reasonable? And if you can't come up with the valuation now, perhaps is it better to go for a safe note or a convertible note where you don't need to work out the valuation now and you can work that out later on. You may also want to think about how many shareholders you want on your cap table. You're not going to go out there asking everyone to invest. And then when you're thinking about the shareholders you want to invest, you want to think about who do you want them to be? Do you want them to be active helpers who are there helping with advice and strategy and putting their opinion on the table? Or do you want them more passive investors to inject the funds but then take a step back? The next thing, get your ESOP sorted. It's a simple step, and it's actually one that is usually required on the term sheets of early stage investors. They want to know that your ESOP's implemented into your cap table before they invest. Not only because then they'll get a real record of their fully diluted ownership that they'll be getting, but also because they believe in the incentivization that an ESOP can provide. They know how much value it can be for the startup they're investing in to go from 0 to 1. Make sure it's set up properly. Don't just do a napkin agreement. You can do it through Cake in a matter of clicks, and our partners can always help. It's doing it right now to save a huge headache cleaning it up later on. The next one, the required approvals. Every company is slightly different, but usually you will be required to get at least some kind of approval from your board and your shareholders to run the raise. The type of approval you need will really depend on your own documents, for example, your constitution and your shareholders agreement. You can send out the resolutions through Cake and have it all signed internally. That will keep all of the records neat and tidy so that when you have the investors ready, you can show them, yes, this raise has been approved. If you're not sure what kind of approvals you need, our legal partners can review your documents and help you as much as you need. The last thing you might want to do is just keep them in the loop. Even if you don't need their approval, it can be useful to let them know what's happening or what you might need from them soon. And that way, when you do ask for them to approve something for you, it's really quick and easy. The Cake investor communication tool can do that in a couple of clicks. And then the tricky legal stuff. So this is the kind of questions which you may want to apply for your own jurisdiction, like how many shareholders are you allowed to have in your jurisdiction, or what are the disclosure rules, and should you have to provide them with any sort of information document before they invest? Now this can get tricky, so if you're not sure, just chat to one of our legal partners. They're all fixed fee and they're all startup focused, so they won't complicate things and they'll make sure it's done right now. The time when the mistakes here will really show up is when you've cut the corners in the early days and then you get to the big VC raise and they're doing the DD and they say, well, you didn't do the raise properly then, that's too much of a risk for us. So it's worth doing it right from the early days to save the headache later. Lastly, your shareholders agreement. You want to make sure that your shareholders agreement is up to date if you already have one, and that it's ready to be applied for this capital raising round. If you don't have one, you likely will need one for this round. Whenever you get at least a couple of investors on the cap table, it's really good practice to get a neat and tidy shareholders agreement in there that you really understand. Again, our legal partners can help with this and make sure that you only use startup lawyers to do it, because otherwise it can get pretty complex. And then when you're ready to execute, do it right. Sometimes people will be really good right up to this point and then just drop the ball when they're ready to execute and send out the offers. Raises can be quite emotional, so once an investor has said they're keen to invest, you want to make sure that you treat it with respect and that you're really effective in the process. On Cake, you can send them their offers for signing and share the relevant documents all through the platform. They can sign the subscription agreement, which can be templated or amended by our legal partners for you, and then you can countersign and issue their shares and issue their share certificates. This can be really powerful when you have an investor come in, they've signed the agreement, and you send them the share certificate that same day. That can really increase their faith in you as a founder and the company as an operation. So it's really important to do that part right. So there you have it, a few pretty simple steps now that you can get started on in your Cake account today to make sure that when you're ready to raise, you're good to go. It's all about the small things now to save the huge headache later, and we're always available to assist whenever you have any questions at all. Thanks guys, and good luck.